Alright, so I've taken some time to go through the comments and responses to the videos that I've done, and I've noticed that I actually do have enough questions to fill out another entire whiteboard to do another Q&A video. So this will be Q&A video number 2. Now all of these questions come from the same person. Their screen name is Jayzer, so this will be the Jayzer episode or Jayzer edition. Now the first question was, how do I work up to max recruitment? Do I progress each set, or do I start with the most intensive and demanding? So the short answer is I definitely never start with the most intensive and demanding. I definitely always work up to what I'm going to be able to work with on any given day, depending on the response that I'm trying to promote through my efforts. But I will never start with the most intensive and demanding. I understand the logic to doing so, because when you're not limited by fatigue, you can lift the most amount of weight the most amount of times. However, the risk associated with that does not outweigh the reward, in my opinion, so I will always work up to whatever weight I'm going to be able to use on any given day. In powerlifting circles and Olympic lifting circles, they call this ramping. In bodybuilding circles, they call it pyramiding. It's a little bit different than ramping, but the objective is the same. You start with a lighter weight and you work up to your daily limit, because training is a subjective experience that only you can experience, and you can't forecast how you're going to perform and how you're going to respond to the work that you're doing on any given day. So the short answer is I never start with the most intensive and demanding, because the risk outweighs the reward, in my personal opinion. The next question was, are there any strategies that I can give to promote various responses? I talk about the different responses that you can promote through your efforts. In fact, when you go to the gym, one of the things you're trying to do, whether you're aware of it or not, is promote an internal response. Getting stronger is an internal response. Building muscle is an internal response. Losing fat, looking better, depending on your subjective assessment of what looks good to you. Internal response. We're talking about neurological responses, physiological responses, and metabolic responses. And then one of the questions was, what's optimal for building muscle? Now that's going to depend on person to person based on their capacity to recover, their capacity to recruit. Are they fast twitch dominant, slow twitch dominant? Too many different things. But I kind of spelled it out in a way that hopefully anybody can understand it. Now, irrespective of the response that you want to promote, one of the things you're going to need to do is recruit your muscles. And depending on the response you want to promote, you might also want to fatigue them. So it goes recruit and fatigue. You can't fatigue something that hasn't been recruited. If you want to promote a neurological response, you want to focus on recruitment. Physiological, recruit and fatigue. Metabolic, fatigue primarily. You obviously can't fatigue what hasn't been recruited, but your focus or the emphasis of your training should be geared towards either recruitment or fatigue, or both, depending on the response that you want to promote. The next series of questions was in response to a video that I did where I was talking about ways that you can overload your muscles throughout their entirety, because under traditional measures, what's happening is when you push a set to failure, what is failure? Failure is the inability to produce enough force to overcome the resistance concentrically. So you've reached concentric failure, but your muscles can still do more. They can still produce force isometrically and eccentrically. So when what you're doing isn't working, what are some things that you can do to modify the way you do what you do to promote the response that you're there to get? So I was talking about, after reaching concentric failure, to do some eccentric repetitions only. Now, how would you do this in a practical setting where you're going to need a power rack or a partner, or with a barbell curl, which is probably the most practical way of doing it? What you would do is you would do all your reps. When you reach concentric failure, you would cheat the weight up and then lower it slowly. Cheat the weight up again, lower it slowly. And if you really wanted to get silly, what you would do is when you reach concentric failure, throw 10 more pounds on each side and then cheat it up and then do the eccentrics. And the purpose is to overload the muscles eccentrically, which is something you're not doing when you train using traditional full range repetitions. So the questions here, when would you use this, and why not exclusively rely on full range repetitions? It's implied that you are relying on full range repetitions and they're not working anymore, and that's when you would use something like this, when what you're doing isn't working. Now the next two questions, how do you measure overload, and do you increase the load based on reps? This shows me that you're focusing on external cues. I always talk about paying attention to the internal cues. So what you need to do is understand why you're doing this. The reason you would do this is to overload the muscles eccentrically. If you're focusing on how to measure and quantify progression and when to increase the load, what are you not focusing on? The internal response you're trying to promote. So when you understand that, you can make the best decision for yourself in terms of how much weight to do and how many reps to do. But I'll give you a little bit of a parameter. Because this method is very intensive as is, you only need like 5 to 10 reps per workout. So pick one exercise. When you reach concentric failure, you're only doing 1 or 2 eccentric reps. You've already reached concentric failure. So limit it to 5 or 10, scale it up or down based on the feedback that your body's giving you. But understand that it's a very intensive method and you run the risk of injury and overworking your capacity to recover. So hopefully that helps you. You like the information, share, click the fucking button at the bottom, subscribe to the channel. I'll keep bringing you the best information you're going to find as it relates to trying to build muscle, get stronger, lose fat, look better, improve your level of physical preparedness, all that fucking shit.